Hi there. To celebrate the start of Pride Month, it's our biggest episode ever. Strap in. Later, Tom Daley speaks out on queer rights and why Shakira's cancelled on World Pride. First though, a prominent LGBTQ+ and pro-democracy activist has been freed from prison in Hong Kong after more than 4 years. Jimmy Sham was among 47 people convicted of conspiracy to commit subversion by holding an unofficial primary election to select candidates. The trial was labelled politically motivated by human rights groups and some Western governments. Jimmy tells Reuters he may be out now, but for how long?
Maybe tomorrow you still can see me. I'm free. Maybe tomorrow I will go back to the jail. I don't know.
While he was in jail, Jimmy won a partial legal victory in his fight for same-sex marriage rights in Hong Kong, a court ordering the city to find a way to recognise gay unions. New gender laws are taking effect in Western Australia. They'll make it much easier for trans and gender-diverse people to amend official documents needed for the likes of employment, education and housing, and there's official recognition of non-binary people for the first time. Plans for draconian anti-LGBTQ+ legislation in Ghana are ready for a first reading in Parliament. Just identifying as queer would get you 3 years in prison, with 5 years for same-sex intimacy. Oh, and if you advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, that's a decade in jail you'd be looking at. Anti-transgender bigots really do want it both ways, don't they? A transgender man's been abused and thrown out of a bar in America for using the women's bathroom. Lucas Strobel had to go to the ladies at Sand Dollar Social Club in South Carolina because there were only urinals in the men's, and that's no good for him. Despite the 25-year-old having a female gender marker, police were called, and according to his claims, they weren't exactly allies.
I'm not resisting at all. I am literally just standing there. I have my phone in my hand. I'm like shaking. As the guy pushed me on the curb, he was calling me girly girl, little girl, girly girl, 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 girl. Finally, the guy gets my wallet, brings it to me, and says, "Here you go, sir." I mean, ma'am.
For Harry Potter's wicked grandma, that's like Christmas and birthdays rolled into one. Luca's now crowdfunding to get the hell out of South Carolina. He's nearly reached his $15,000 target to relocate to California. There's a link in our show notes. At least 70 members of the European Parliament say they'll be at Budapest Pride, despite Hungary's ban on queer events. Organisers are defiant, promising the biggest Pride march the country's ever seen. The lawmakers are part of an informal group that wants to protect and advance LGBTQ+ rights. Next, making breast cancer care more accessible to transgender and non-binary people. They narrate and lead a video from Northern Ireland charity The Rainbow Project, showing exactly what happens during a screening appointment. A link's in our show notes. It's hoped this will demystify the whole thing for people who can often feel left out of traditional health messaging. A £120,000 fine for a UK football club over homophobic chanting by fans who are clearly in the closet. Otherwise, why would you? The self-loathing is real. Happened as West Ham United hosted Chelsea last February in London. The Football Association's warned West Ham about its future conduct. The team says it strongly condemns the chants. Olympic diver Tom Daley's been speaking out on how things really feel like they're going backwards for queer people.
It is scary in some parts of the world how the rights of LGBT people are kind of being reversed or dangerously threatened. And I think it's where minorities have to come together for the greater good, because once one group has been targeted, it will move on to the next and the next and the next.
The 31-year-old also telling Sky News he wonders where kindness and compassion have gone. Reckons being visible is a great form of activism, though. AFLW, the Australian Football League for women, is going to double the number of Pride rounds. There'll be 2 weeks bigging up LGBTQ+ inclusivity, and it means every team can play in their Pride strip at a home game. And Shakira's had to cancel her World Pride concert in Washington, D.C. The singer was due to perform on Saturday just gone, but there have been issues with her equipment. I know the feeling. She'd been teasing performances with will.i.am and Wyclef Jean in the run-up to the gig. Hi there. Later, the Bearded Tits swan song. You're welcome. First though, a police ban on a pro-LGBTQ+ demonstration in Budapest has been overturned by Hungary's top court. 5 human rights groups, including Amnesty International, were going to protest last Sunday against the country's ban on pride events. Judges have ruled there was no justification in preventing the demo, especially seeing as one was allowed a fortnight earlier. Organisers of this month's Budapest Pride are defiant and pressing ahead. The city's mayor, Gergely Karachny, says he'll be there.
All you are invited Budapest. Let it be this pride, the biggest, the most powerful and more international pride that world has ever seen.
Hungary's government's targeting queer people to distract from a cost of living crisis. The Fidesz party's behind in the polls and worried about losing next year's general election. Next, a big legal win for a trans couple in India who don't want their child's birth certificate to feature the terms mother and father. Kerala High Court's ruled the pair can both be recorded as parent instead. Previously, trans man Zahad, who gave birth, was listed as mother transgender, while trans woman Zia Paval was down as father transgender. And it's the end of the line for the bearded tit. Not talking about anti-queer US Vice President JD Vance, but rather a much-loved LGBTQ+ venue in Sydney, Australia. The performance space and bar's been around for 11 years, but the owner wants to do other things now, so it'll close in November. No time to tell you that. Northern Ireland's Causeway Coast and Glens Council's got its first ever out gay deputy mayor. And a Happy Pride Month post from classic kids show Sesame Street is triggering all the right people. Good. Hi there. Later, X marks the spot in Puerto Rico. First though, a culture wars doctor who pulled down some transgender pride flags in a hospital she worked at ain't working there anymore. They've been displayed in a mental health waiting room at the Queensland Children's Hospital in Australia. It's thought Dr. Gillian Spencer is now banned from the site. She's also accused colleagues of being transgender activists. What you've got to understand, though, is things have been tough for her, bless.
Before I was stood down, being in the hospital felt very heavy. Walking past those damn trans pride flags every day, talking to people while they were wearing rainbow lanyards and pronoun badges was dispiriting.
Bigotry is a heavy cross to bear. If you Google Dr. Gillian Spencer, you'll very much get the measure of her. She was recently beaten to the role of president of the psychiatrist governing body for Australia and New Zealand by someone who supports gender-affirming care. More than a third of queer people setting up businesses in Europe say they've hidden their sexuality or gender identity from investors. A new survey finds a fifth of those entrepreneurs worried it could negatively impact their fundraising. About 33% just didn't feel comfortable with sharing. A new feature now, things right-wing lawmakers are prioritising over stuff that actually matters. In America, and to be honest, this is going to be mostly America, a Navy ship named after Harvey Milk will no longer honour the legendary LGBTQ+ rights activist. A Republican in Illinois wants to declare June as Family Month. And an order to withhold gender-affirming care for trans prison inmates in the US has been blocked by a judge. And non-binary and gender non-conforming people in Puerto Rico will be able to have an X gender marker on their birth certificates. A ruling from the Supreme Court's come about following a lawsuit. 6 non-binary people have been suing, saying their rights to equal protection under America's Constitution were being violated. Hi there. Later, how to needle those anti-trans hate-mongers. First though, author Edmund White, a pioneer in queer literature, has died at the age of 85. One of the American's most well-known books was The Joy of Gay Sex back in 1977, a manual he wrote with his psychotherapist. Also helped set up New York AIDS prevention organisation, the GMHC, in 1982. He was diagnosed with HIV 3 years later. Here's Edmund receiving a National Book Foundation Award in 2019, talking about the process of writing.
Stendhal once remarked that writing fiction is not a full-time job. Only writers as prolific as Balzac and Joyce Carol Oates can claim it is. The rest of us blurb other people's books and write too many emails. How else to fill up the obligatory 8 hours?
Oh, do go on.
Pornography, cooking, and adultery are other ways.
Edmund's 6th autobiography, The Loves of My Life, came out earlier this year. A review said he could credibly claim to be one of the greatest living authorities on gay sex. A gay Guatemalan man's now back in America on the orders of a judge after being wrongly deported to Mexico. The individual, known only as OCG, applied for asylum in the States last year after he was attacked multiple times in his home country because of his sexuality. US officials falsely claimed he wasn't afraid of being sent to Mexico, which borders Guatemala. He was returned there by authorities, remaining in hiding ever since. And the name of Harry Potter's Wicked Grandma has been removed from an interactive art piece, presumably by someone who isn't an anti-trans, dead-inside vessel of venom. Talking about a textile display in Derbyshire in England, people could stitch the names of inspirational women onto. Grandma's name was stitched over in the trans pride colours, and after a so-called feminist activist undid that handiwork, the piece ain't on display no more. No time to tell you that. Air Canada's run its first ever flight to be staffed entirely by queer people. I wonder if it was going to Quebec. That's Quebec, huh? And a Pride-themed suite at a Washington, D.C. hotel features 300 handmade butterflies on the wall, a vintage copy of The Wizard of Oz, and Golden Girls artwork. Hi there. Later, one of Europe's biggest Pride events is cancelled. First though, a ban on loans to anti-queer Uganda by the World Bank has been lifted. It was imposed in 2023 when the country brought in one of the world's harshest anti-LGBTQ+ laws, which includes the death penalty in some cases. The Anti-Homosexuality Act remains, but the bank reckons mitigation measures mean funding can resume in a way that doesn't harm or discriminate against queer people. Here's Uganda's President Museveni speaking to CNN.
Do you personally dislike homosexuals?
Of course, they are disgusting. What sort of people are they? How can you go? I never knew what they were doing. That's how I've been told recently that what they do is terrible, disgusting.
He is so gay. It's estimated the act has cost Uganda maybe as much as $1.7 billion, mainly because of loans being frozen. Like in Hungary and other countries with anti-LGBTQ+ laws, they're used as a distraction by failing governments. And speaking of Hungary, Hungary's ban on LGBTQ+ content in schools and on primetime TV violates basic human rights and freedom of expression. So says a top legal advisor at the European Court of Justice in a 69-page advisory judgment the ECJ can now consider. Also says the law's based on prejudice, not science, and rather than protect children, as is disingenuously claimed, it actively harms them. And the UK's Liverpool Pride has been cancelled with just a month and a half to go. Organisers say there have been significant financial and logistical challenges, but they plan to return in 2026. It's one of Europe's biggest Pride events. 60,000 people turned out last year, the highest attendance ever. No time to tell you that. The World Pride Parade is tomorrow in Washington, D.C. Also got Tokyo Pride this weekend too. And America's Billboard music charts ranking Born This Way from Lady Gaga, the top LGBTQ+ anthem of all time. Get in touch in our socials, we're at Pride Daily Pod. I'm Kev McGraw. See you next week.